Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, what's coming up on today's show?
Jim, today we're going to talk about a potentially important development in the James Bay region, Winsome's option of the Renard diamond mine site.
So what is the significance of Winsome's deal to potentially purchase the Renard diamond site from the bankruptcy trustee?
Well, on April 3rd, Winsome was halted to make an announcement that it had secured an exclusive option to acquire the physical assets of the Renard diamond mine site for a $4 million Canadian cash payment that gives it until September 30th to assess the feasibility of repurposing all the existing infrastructure, power infrastructure, processing infrastructure for potentially processing spodumene ore trucked from its Adina project, where it has just under 59 million tons of 1.12% inferred. Now, the Renard diamond mine went into commercial production in January 2017 and has had a troubled history. By late 2019, Stornoway had basically gone into receivership protection, and the mine ended up being owned by Osisko Gold Royalties and the Quebec government, who operated it until October last year when they finally suspended operations. Initially, one of the problems was breakage of the diamonds, which of course diminishes their value. But more recently, it has been the falling diamond prices since 2022, which has made diamond mining a very difficult proposition. Now, this deal, Winsome can extend it to the end of the year by making another $2 million cash payment and another 2 months to the end of February 2025 for a further $2 million. So for $8 million, it has almost a year to assess the feasibility of acquiring this and using it as a hub for spokes that deliver ore from various parts in that general area. Now, the actual deal requires it to, if it wants to elect, it needs to pay Canadian $52 million in cash or shares in 3 stages over 2 years. $15 million due on election, another $22 million within a year, and then $15 million after 2 years. Now, even this initial option agreement requires approval from the Superior Court of Quebec, which they expect by April 30th. If it does not get approval for this option period, this exclusive period, then it will get its money back. And then even afterwards, when it elects to, yes, we are going to buy this site, and this would not include inheriting any of the liabilities associated with the original Stornoway, but it would involve inheriting the reclamation liabilities. So by the time they do this, they'll need approval from the Superior Court of Quebec again to make sure that Winsome has the critical mass to actually take care of all this. And the $4 million payment was designed to really take care of the care and maintenance costs of the Renard facility. Now, the Renard facility is serviced by a 500-kilometer or so road from Chibougamau, and there's a proposal to extend another 150, 200 kilometers to the north up from the Renard mine, the La Grande highway, and that would connect it to the Trans-Taiga highway, which services all those hydropower stations along those reservoirs that Quebec has created. And this clearly is a key part of this. This will only make sense if this road gets built on a timely basis, and that will have to be permitted. And again, permitting in Canada is something that has a lot of room for improvement. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts to this deal. Now, why is it important to Winsome? Well, it basically gives it a chance to achieve critical mass over the next 9 months. It's got a 50,000-meter drill program going on at Adina to further infill the inferred resource, but to also try and expand the resource. By itself, 59 million tons of 1.12% probably isn't big enough to justify a standalone operation, but there's enough projects in the area with evidence of decent grade pegmatites, that multiple pegmatites could be independently developed as open pits and all transported to a central milling facility. And then, of course, because there's a road that connects down to Chibougamau where there's a railhead, the spodumene concentrates could be trucked south and then railed to one of the hydroxide refineries that will be built close to the St. Lawrence Seaway. Now, where is if Winsome is not able to come up with a bigger and better grade resource at the Jamar pegmatite, for which it already has an estimate, where can it acquire additional resources? Now, we know immediately to the south is the Galinée project, which is a 50-50 JV between Azimuth Exploration and SOQUEM, the government agency. And they did drilling last year, which got some pretty good lithium intersections, and it's assumed that they are the down dip extension of the Jamar pegmatites, of which there's an upper zone and a footwall zone, but the intersections are too deep to likely be open pittable, so that's not of particular interest to Winsome. Now, there is something peculiar about the geometry of the holes that Azimuth intersected, and when they go back this year, I suspect they may find that they actually have parallel dikes, not down dip extensions of the Adina dikes, but parallel ones that come close to daylighting but aren't exposed at surface. So there could end up being additional open pittable material just to the south, but we won't know until later this year if Azimuth and SOQUEM go back drilling there. The other Galinée project is owned 100% by Midland, but it last year farmed it out to Rio Tinto as part of a 10 property package that allows Rio Tinto to earn 70% by spending an enormous amount of money collectively on all of them. Rio Tinto has started a 5.8 million Canadian drill program on the iceberg showing, and this is a continuation of the Trieste Formation, the greenstone, which is the host to the Adina Jamar pegmatite, and it trends to the east and passes through the Galinée project. And so there's potential there for significant additional decent grade tonnage to be developed, but the problem is Rio Tinto controls this ground. And one wonders, well, shouldn't it be a Rio Tinto who ends up acquiring the Renard mine site and uses that as the hub for all these spokes in that general area? And perhaps that is the long-term strategy of Winsome by tying this up now, doing all this research. At the same time, it's working on feasibility demonstration work and environmental permitting for Adina itself, so that if it can fast-track development of open pit mining at Adina, and if the road gets built, trucking it to the Renard mine site where the infrastructure for a large processing facility already exists. So it's potentially a way to shorten the timeline to get pegmatite lithium production going in this remote part of Quebec. But, Rio Tinto will sit back, do its work. By the end of this year, they will have a very good idea of what's on the Galinée project, and maybe they will end up seeing enough critical mass that they will become the consolidator of the district. And since it's only an option for which, Winsome will be out of pocket at most $8 million for this exclusive period, if it ends up being acquired by Rio Tinto, well, then Rio Tinto would inherit these liabilities. And then the Superior Court of Quebec would probably be very happy to have Rio Tinto be the one that inherits the reclamation liabilities. Now, the most interesting potential for Winsome to consolidate are two other juniors. One is Comet Lithium, which has the Liberty property, and it has a sort of a 3-kilometer segment in the southwestern portion of this property where the Trieste Formation from the Adina property continues through the Liberty property and then continues on to the Galinée project of Midland and Rio Tinto. And Comet has done some gravity surveys which suggest there are structural trends there that could potentially host pegmatites. As soon as goose hunting season's over at the end of May, in June they will put boots on the ground to ground truth these targets and set a stage for drilling these targets, if they're real, in July so that they tell whether or not they have a potential extension or repetition of the pegmatites that Adina has already outlined on its own ground. And because this 3-kilometer segment is too small for standalone, Comet would obviously do some sort of deal with Winsome to blend that segment in with Winsome's Adina resource. There is a wild card for comment in that there's a 6.5 kilometer trend to the northeast, a structural trend that's not these greenstone rocks, but that could also be an emplacement conduit for pegmatites. They'll go in there later in the summer to check that out, and we'll see if they come up with anything there. Their flagship project at this stage is Trollis East, which is much farther south, where they're going to be doing a till sampling program. It's a much larger property, and that till sampling program will look both for heavy minerals such as gold and copper, and as well as spodumene in the till to see if there are some pegmatites in that area. And Comet's got a couple $1 million working capital. It's part of my 2024 bottom fish collection. Not much paper out. So that one has a lot of potential leverage on the upside if it ends up finding something on the Liberty claim. The other important project is Loyal Lithium, and they were in their fast last year. They have the Trieste project, which continues to the east of the Midland Rio Tinto Galinée project, and it also has the Trieste formation, though the pegmatites they found are actually off-board the greenstone in different rocks, and they drilled a hole last year into Dike 1, which had a good intersection. They did channel samples across a couple other dikes that also yielded good grades over decent distances. They started a drill program in February. We haven't heard much, and it's kind of interesting. Neither Comet nor Loyal Lithium have responded much in the market to this news. So I think the market, the audience out there is still either too jaded about lithium or doesn't quite appreciate the potential importance of this Renard mine site deal as the key for Winsome ending up consolidating everything in this area, or even after it does that, it ends up being absorbed by Rio Tinto if it sees that there's enough critical mass there to justify being the operator of the pegmatite mining in that particular area.
Would Brunswick's Mirage project benefit from the Renard mine site as a destination to truck its pegmatite ore?
Well, the Mirage project is a little bit farther north, somewhat to the west of what this La Grande proposed road would be before it connects with the Trans-Taiga. But Mirage project appears to have sufficient critical mass to be a standalone development. Now, a key with trucking ore is grade. Now the Adina grade of 1.12% is not as good as, say, 2%. And at Mirage, they have sort of a 2 by 3 kilometer area where they drilled several parallel pegmatite dikes that had bonanza grades, 2% plus. And they started a drill program this year to go in there. And the market's been kind of jaded about the Mirage project because you're drilling this footprint of these, they're not super fat pegmatites such as the CD5 pegmatite at Corvette of Patriot Battery Metals. So you're going to give us some resource that's 40 million tons of 1.5% or so at the end of this season in this remote location. But there's more going on there than that. And they are close to having finished this program. When I talked to Killian Charles the other day, they had not yet decided whether to poke a couple scout holes underneath those big giant boulders that stretch for 3 kilometers well to the south of this pegmatite swarm that they have been drilling. And the important thing about these boulders is they have very large pegmatite crystals, but the mineralogy of the pegmatite, they call it micaceous, which is very different in what they have been intersecting in the outcropping pegmatite swarm. So the source of those boulders are at this stage unknown. And I've speculated, well, maybe they're sitting right on top of the bedrock source and has simply been frost heaved and broken up and moved upwards for some reason, then surrounded by overburden. And that would be the purpose of putting some scout holes under there, because if lo and behold they hit some fat pegmatites right underneath this, then they know where they're going to be going back to in the summer. And if it's the case that these are sitting on top of the dike system, that's a 3-kilometer strike, which means that the whole thing is probably a giant dike. But one of the interesting things that Killian did mention was, like, I asked, so are you really just drilling off this little area? And he said, well, there's a whole bunch of parallel dikes within this that we are targeting, so we will be having more intersections within this footprint that we originally looked at last year. But yes, we have also stepped onto the 75% owned inlier claims of Osisco, and they may even have stepped to the northeast of that, because they did have some outcrops or float to the northeast. And that's what's not really out there. Everybody thinks that Brunswick is just drilling off this small footprint, but they may have been stepping out and hitting additional pegmatite that extends the strike of this system. And that's really what the market wants to see. It wants to see a substantial strike to the Mirage dike swarm. But I asked him, have you seen, in stepping beyond this immediate footprint, have you seen anything that explains the big boulders to the southwest? And he said, no, everything is still the same as what we have in the original Mirage dike swarm. Even when you go up ice, we have not yet intersected anything that looks like those boulders. So the source of those boulders are going to be a big mystery that hopefully they figure out this summer. But reading between the lines as they wrap up this program and wait for the assays, is that they may have significantly expanded the footprint, and the stock actually had a decent week. And seems like every time they put out news, the stock goes down. And this week, didn't do anything a couple of weeks ago when they put out the news about acquiring additional pegmatite targets in Greenland and other parts of Quebec. But this week, there seemed to have been a sea change in attitude towards it. And it happened to coincide with the Winsome news. And I asked Killian, has this implications for you? He says, no, whatever we have, it will have to be standalone, everything, in one big area. We have to make this really big. What Winsome's doing is interesting, and it's good for what they have there. And again, we need we need like 50 JDARs or 50 CV5s to meet the lithium goals for 2030 and beyond. So this is not a case where you only have room for one deposit. So the more they find up there, the better. And hopefully this past week is finally an inflection point for the lithium sector in the James Bay region. Gold definitely has undergone an inflection point. Gold continues to go higher. Everybody I talk to, everybody I read, they're all mumbling, coming up with excuses that don't make sense as to why gold is going up. Somebody's buying gold, a lot of physical gold, and they're putting it away. And this may be the beginning of a substantial gold bull market. And, regardless that gold is not that important for the material world, a big gold bull market is also good for the juniors that are chasing after other metals that are important for the energy transition, for the energy requirements of the AI dream, and for geopolitical supply disruptions that come when the global West and East finally turn into a hot conflict.
John, thanks for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser. I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.